Okay, so we are on What Matters Worldwide, and hopefully Vince is with me now.
Hey, here I
Hey,
am.
there we are. It took me a second to
Indeed.
get.
Thank you, Mr. Ocelli, for the Ocelli effect. I appreciate you hosting for me tonight. Um, this is the last live broadcast. Are we on?
Yes, we are, sir.
All right. Well, welcome to UCY.TV. Vince Easley here, and this is the last Thursday night broadcast of What Matters Worldwide. So, hey, this has been really great here. I've learned a lot. Really have. I'm not leaving UCY. This is forever my family, and I will continue to be involved here. A lot of great people, and a lot of people that I'm learning from here, and so I guess it's been a great journey here. Let me drop out of the screen here and go back over to chat. And hey, everybody, glad to see you here. And this is kind of been a think tank here for us, and not gonna let the cat out of the bag, but there's we can see. We got dead air, Chuck.
We shouldn't have dead air. I've got the network up and you.
Dave says dead air, but try to refresh. I guess we'll type that in.
We also have the phone lines open. I know that.
All right. Ralph Epperson is going to be joining us here. Oh, crap. We've got a motor in the background going. Hey, so I'm back home in Arkansas. Let me see if I can get this rolling. Chuck, you say you trip over your tongue. I drag mine along behind me.
See, that right there means you got a bigger tongue than me, brother. So.
Okay, here we go. This is the last live broadcast of What Matters Worldwide. And later on down the road in some of my projects, I hope to get back to doing something that's pre-recorded, and I think that might be just a little bit down the line there. But I'm out here on a farm in Arkansas. I'm a buddy of mine. I've been his helper for the past 10 years. Let me move my mic. Maybe I had it too far away. Anyways, I'm going to just get back in life. I spent a year and a half about here at UCY, and happy birthday, UCY, coming up, I think Tuesday or something. What a fantastic place to be right here. We have so many great people. There's J. Cynthia Brooks, love you. Look at, we have Josh, Anti-Tyranny News, Lori Prepper Chicks, awesome. Hecty was just on, I think, with you, huh, Chuck, and Chuck Ocelli here. Hey, you know what? We're at least a think tank here, and we're discussing big ideas. Now, a lot of the stuff that Lori talks about, I'm going to be putting into practice. I'm way out here in the woods. I'm sitting outside right now, matter of fact, in the Ozarks, in open sky, pine trees, oak trees, looking out across the open field towards the mountains. It's beautiful. I'm glad to be back home. I got home a week ago today. Boy, that was fun. I spent 7 months traveling the West. I went down to Quartzsite, Arizona, and I camped there for a few weeks. I had the great honor of meeting and interviewing Jennifer Jones. She stood up against tyranny there in Quartzsite, against the local tyranny of the politicians there.
Right, I did that show with you, Vince.
Mm-hmm, that's right, sure did. Chuck hosted that from the deserts of Arizona. I covered Bunkerville. I spent a few weeks up there. I was able to meet a lot of great people, and it was my first time and only time out as on the streets, really, as in broadcasting as a citizen journalist. I met some great people like Jason Patrick and Thomas and PM Bierce. Thomas from Keeper of the Republic. Hey, these folks are out there and putting themselves out in the front lines. Many of us, each and every one of us, of course, have a little different view on life, and it's important that we be able to discuss that. Hey, Jules. Oh, man, Jules is so awesome. I love you, Jules. And I have learned so much from her, listening every morning. It's the flagship radio show here at UCY before the first cup. Of course, Prepper Chick, we got her right before with a recap broadcast in the mornings. And I've so enjoyed and will still continue to enjoy being right here with all these great folks. You know what? I think we really have we have made a difference. It's you know, I don't know about you, but for me, when I got out, JJ, my brother, I love you, man. Right on.
Forgot to mention JJ's show too there, Vince.
What's that?
I said you forgot to mention JJ's show on Sunday.
Oh, no, I forgot JJ, that's for sure. I forgot a lot of people, like Drew and Chuck coming up next. It's one of the most important shows that I love. And then Drew, Off-Grid Journey, which I'm starting my my own off-grid journey in a sense, and a lot of great projects I want to work on. I want to get an aquaponics going, which, man, you know, Drew has so much information. Last Sunday was the first show I missed of his, but I will be catching up on that for certain. So, and yes, I will be back. I'm going to be doing like a podcast, I guess, but that way I have not this stumbling along. I think I will be able to, you know, without a schedule, produce something that will be concise and informative and to the point. Also, you know, including in that would, you know, be some of the projects I'm working on and updating that. Some other, oh man, what would really be cool would be a combination of taking a mass heater and for your heat side, and then there's a big old lake down here my buddy Kenny built, and you could run a pipe off in there on the cold side and do a Stirling engine, and I think I could get geared up. Now he's got, you know, a huge shop, everything that one might need to do any kind of fabrication, so and all sorts of things laying around to work with. I have hopes of really getting into learning a lot more research and on what I always do, everything. There's nothing that I won't ever care to take a look at. And I think that's important. Otherwise, you know, we exist in a confirmation bias, you know. If we're, and here's a big shout out to Nathan Frazier and to Larkin Rose, who I saw that weekend before I left. What a great guy. A lot of great information. And learning to live free, okay, is very important. And I've downloaded it. Since I've been offline, I've been listening over and over to some of Nathan's podcasts that I had downloaded. And I'll tell you what, I've listened to probably 12 some odd hours that I had on my phone, and listened to that about 5 times. And every time I listen to it, I actually pick up a little bit more. And it's amazing how what a fantastic job Nathan Frazier for Live Free FM on Sunday nights here on UCY. And he brings incredible guests and presents information that I think is incredible. JJ, my brother, the reason I'm here, and that's for certain, man. What an honor meeting you, and yeah, you led me on this path. JJ's getting kind of grayish. Well, I'm not reading everything in chat there, but I see everybody is. Let me see. Dave says something about, oh yeah, on YouTube about his case. He posted, yeah, I haven't been there to check out. I know that I've got a lot of stuff there in the Google that I haven't looked at yet. So, anyways, excuse me. That was a drink. That went about halfway right.
Well, that happens sometimes, Vince. You know.
Yeah. Chuck, you've been a great help, man. I really appreciate everything you've done. You've hosted for me several times.
Yeah, a couple of times I actually just took over the show, and a couple of times we worked together on it.
Uh-huh.
Depending.
Yep.
We We also had some Skype stuff fall apart on us the one time, and I wound up just running my mouth for a while for you. So there's all kinds of different adventures and combinations that have happened on your show, and really appreciate you having me participate in it, and I hope that we'll be able to work together some more on some other stuff. Plus, Vince has been responsible for some of the interesting guests I've had as well.
Hey, oh man, Before the Flood author Daniel Lewis Crumpton is awesome. J. Cynthia Brooks, Cancer Kickers. I've been producing for her on the weekends. J. Cynthia, I don't know what to do. Skype would not allow me access to the network. And is that really Shaliak? No, that's not Shaliak. Is it? Shali Lace. I can't get in. And I opened another account to try to get in. And bam, now I can't even get into my original Skype account. So I think you and I will have to talk and see about how to pre-record your show and get it uploaded then and sent over to Jules so that she can put it in. And that way we won't have all the issues of trying to get Skyped in and all that. So I don't know if we have enough time between now and Saturday, but this morning is when I decided to, I've been kicking it around. I've had several problems to contend with, mainly the fact that Skype has locked me out. Yeah, Lord, it is evil. Skype is evil. So, Cynthia, we are definitely going to have to figure out how we are going to continue your show, and that's going to require that some Audacity files perhaps, and putting that into a MP3 and sending it on to the network to be broadcast then. So I would, I of course want to continue to produce for you in any manner I can. So that's it's going to have to be what we'll have to do. And I will add you to this new Skype account, and we'll chat later tomorrow or tonight. Well, after Double Cross Radio. We ain't going nowhere till Double Cross is done. Yeah. Hey, Chuck, you got Mr. Epperson, Ralph Epperson. What a great guy, man. I've known this guy for quite some time. We've talked for at least almost about 20 years, I guess. Who cares about Robin Williams, right? Why would that guy kill himself? He's the epitome of humor and good cheer, and man, something's wrong with that picture, I think. Huh, JJ?
Well, I've got a lot of thoughts on that, but it is often people like that end up in these sort of situations because they're empathetic and intelligent.
Well, that may be it. I never even give that any consideration.
But I got to tell you that the first thought I had, though, to be honest with you, is, oh my God, was this guy on SSRIs or what? Because he was coming out of a rehab, and you know how they love to drug for drug and all that kind of fun stuff and blah blah. So of course, that was my first thought. But you want me to bring in Mr. Epperson now?
Well, we'll give him about 15 more minutes.
All right.
Before we bring him in. I've had a lot of guests on. Ralph Epperson has been on with me I twice for sure, maybe 3 times. Let's see. So I started May 2nd, a year ago, last May, and then I did a show where JJ used to be for Dr. Carpenter for the Medical Conspiracy, and about that time was when I was new over here to UCY and got to know folks over here, and anybody that listens to me know that I'm just a guy over here talking, right? So I'm not no great voice. Now I tell you what, you, Chuck, have a great radio voice, and
I appreciate that, Vince. I don't agree with you, but I appreciate it.
Because I heard you saying in your show earlier, you thought that you don't sound good on radio, and I promise you. Now I was talking to Ralph, and I'm sorry, my Southern in me just almost precludes me from calling him Ralph, but even as a friend, in that sense, I just like to say, Mr. Epperson, that he really is a personable guy, and he wants to be called by his name, Ralph. So, like Jose, who, man, yeah, he rocked it in the second hour here all this time. And Colby and Minor Dave, thanks for stepping in, you guys, and filling in these last few months. I really appreciate you guys having come along, and hopefully you guys can put it together where you got your show. Thanks, Josh. You're an inspiration, man. You do a fantastic job. Of people on my inspiration list, brother, you are and have been on the top up there. And that's for certain. Welcome, Rads. Glad to see you. Big supporter here and in the chat. So, yeah, what a great place to be. Hey.
Well, I talked to Mr. Epperson really briefly before I went on air, and I happen to know what he's talking about tonight, man. And I'm really anxious to hear this.
Yeah. Now, I think how we'll do this is perhaps we can come in with a little crosstalk here in the beginning, and then we'll allow him to do a presentation basically, and then maybe we can get into some questions again after that and some interaction, and hopefully, I wish Mike was here. SLC, man, we miss you, dude. Get some calls, get some interaction from people here in chat. Now, Ralph Epperson is a historian for a great many years. He's an author, he's a lecturer. He's written a lot of books. Now, he runs down. Let me back up. Let me premise this before I go any further, if you please. Now, if you're a hunter, and if you'll sit up on a mountain and you'll look over a field, and let's say you're hunting rabbits, okay? Now, you'll see rabbit trails and you'll see rabbit holes, and if you'll observe, you'll see movement and so forth. Now, if you're down there up in it and you follow this trail and you follow what you assume to be one rabbit and he pops in and out of this one hole, you're going to assume that's it. You got it figured out. You know how to rabbit hunt, okay? You follow this trail down, and now let's name these trails isms. Communism, capitalism, socialism, whatever ism you want to, okay? Let's name these rabbits, okay? Let's name them Zionists. Let's name them Papists. Let's name them number names. There's a lot. Illuminati, Masons, on and on and on, right? Okay. Now, the fact is that all these isms are all part of the same field with the same bunch of rabbits, and they ain't just one rabbit, they ain't just one hole, they just ain't one trail. So, for me to try to pin it down, because I think it all shifts around. It's it's a bunch of rabbits, it's a bunch of trails, and it's a bunch of isms and all that isms and so forth and so on. But basically, what it is an empire that we see today. It's represented, I think, the two-headed beast that heads up the New World Order. Now, we can see some opposition, of course, and maybe that's all smoke and mirrors, too. But anyways, I'll wind that up by saying that Mr. Epperson, Ralph, has his ideas of what exactly it is. And, of course, it's very historical. I think there's just many names of the same beast.
Well, Vince, we're gonna hold calls until Mr. Epperson does his presentation, right?
Oh yes, absolutely, yes.
All right, so 818, you're calling in right now. I'm going to decline you because we're going to bring on Ralph first. Okay, I just want you to know that.
Sorry about that. That's my bad.
No problem. I'm just letting people know because I just want to make sure I'm keeping this straight for you, Vince.
Great. Oh, so great. Jules is telling us all about what's coming for UCY, which is awesome. She told me an idea. I wouldn't want to say too much and let the cat out of the bag. Yeah, fantastic. And this is going to free a lot of time up where she's constrained, and also eliminate the problems of crap going wrong. So, also, she's going to be doing a tutorial later on, which I like. And I wish we could have kept the kind of meetings going, the business meetings for UCY, but a lot of people weren't. I'm shutting up. Jules is fantastic. Great person. What a hard worker. Been a definite inspiration to me, for certain. Also, like to give shout out to Connie, the girl I went to school with, who really set me really to thinking, hey, I need to really make sure of what it is I'm sharing has some credibility, and to be able to back it up. And then Jules, of course, calls for credibility from us. Don't be popping off with BS without being able to back it up, documentation. So it's been a great journey for me here. I think it's made me a much more seen, probably, I guess, maybe, about, and again, back to Ralph Epperson. I saw his presentation, I think 20-something hours out of Tucson, out of public access. He sent me his book, The Unseen Hand, and I read a couple of other books that he's put out, watched other video series, and so hopefully with a little help, he has this stuff on what he just told me something, I forget, tape, quarter-inch tape, I forget. Translate that over to be able to bring that into the new stream that Jules is going to be putting together. Fantastic.
All right, Vince, so you ready for him now?
Well, yeah, we could pop him in a few minutes early. I told him at 8:30, but let's fill this last 5 minutes here. You and I, Chuck. When I hand you the mic a little bit, and well, now I told him that you two are shall I let out? Yeah, he's going to be doing a JFK thing, so you and he are really, I think, I told him you guys would do some great radio together, so I look forward to that. Why don't you lead out with a little bit about what you know about Jesse James? Let's kick this ball down the road right now, and let's get it started, and then we'll bring Mr. Epperson in and roll right along.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jesse James has been one of the most interesting figures in American history if you get beyond what the mainstream teaches you. The typical sort of anecdotal discussion about him involves the idea that he was a bank robber, he was a criminal, the James gang, all that kind of fun stuff. Train robberies, things like this, Western outlaw at any rate, all of that kind of good stuff. But you know what? The reality about Jesse James is way different than you might want to believe. But of course, we should be kind of familiar with this sort of distortion of history, this sort of solipsistic view where you have to bow to authority and bow to the official story. Quite often you learn that there's a lot of historians out there who are not interested in the truth. What a big shock, right? But, apparently, and just in a really quick sort of way, when I talked to Mr. Epperson earlier, Ralph or Mr. Epperson, I don't know, I can't get away from calling him Mr. Epperson either, Vince. And I'm not Southern, brother. I mean, I know I'm living in the South now, but I'm not Southern. But either way, but I got to refer to him as Mr. Epperson. I do know that he researched this topic because immediately he just hit a couple of points really quickly, and I knew that this was one of those areas that, although I am not really well versed in it, I've got to tell you that it is one of those things that I advise anybody to look into, because this is yet another example. We're not talking about a president. We're just talking about a figure in history who has been, either lionized or demonized for the wrong reasons, and his true story has been redacted, withheld, obfuscated, and what a shock, right? The historians lie to you, my friends. That's what I can tell you. So
lies, all lies.
This happens, my friend. This does happen. But Mr. Epperson is going to give us a different view, and from what I understand really quickly, he's actually going to tell us some stuff tonight that I have no idea about. And I love it when that happens. So let's see if we can add him in. And hopefully it's all holding up. I still see the network. I still see you, Vince.
Hey, and I ain't got no clothes on.
Oh, here we go.
Say, Cynthia, I'm so jealous. I'm gonna go dig Jesse James up and shoot him. Who did that to you? My love.
Oh my, oh my.
And if you ain't in chat, then you don't know what that's about.
Wow.
Hey, if you're catching this downstream, YouTube, MP3,
go to ucy.tv.
Yeah, and you can /WMW, or better yet, go to, and you'll end up here. There's the chat goes to all the show hosts here. We all share chat, and Jules has got some great stuff coming up too. We'll leave that for her. So y'all stay tuned to ucy.tv. But go to ucy.tv news and check out all that. Then look at the top of the page at the banner up there and see all the great features. And there's going to be a whole lot more coming too with a better web page. And Jules has such great stuff going on. I'm so excited, and it's going to be great. So do we have Ralph with us?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon.
I was going to say Mr. Epperson now. And Chuck and I were just talking about that. We have such great respect for you. Man, what a great work you've done. Welcome to the last live broadcast of What Matters Worldwide. On down the line, I hope to bring together some more productions, and that's yet to come, and I hope to be working with you as well. Now, my brother has done a few videos for you, so I neglected to gather any of that, but rest assured I'll do that later after this broadcast, and pop him in here while Drew and Chuck are on Double Cross Radio. So you're an author, you're a lecturer, historian. You've researched a great many things over the years, and tonight our topic is about Jesse James. So let me hand you the mic, Ralph, and won't you tell us the story of Jesse James?
Yes, well, thank you very much. Yeah, we're going to talk about Jesse James today. You say, well, why should we care about him? Because Jesse James did not die in 1882, as history has recorded. He lived to be 103 and died in 1953. So you're 1953, yeah. So anyway, that's the whole story in a nutshell. But between 1951, forgive me, 1951, he was 103 years old. He was a major, and I mean major, player in this nation's past. For instance, he was elected a United States Senator. Jesse James sat in the Senate of the United States for one term, 1901 to 1907, from the state of Montana as a Democrat. And he decided not to run because he probably made a mistake by running, because people wanted to know his background as a senator, and he didn't want to tell them because he faked his own death in 1882. And what he did between those 2 years is a major, and I mean a major story that we can only partially cover probably. Now, I've got it's about a 4-hour DVD called Jesse James Lived to be 103. We're going to briefly skim that and cover, I believe, the salient parts that would encourage you to go watch the rest of it. I believe it's on Access, on YouTube, but I'm not sure. So if you want to see it, go look for Jesse James Lived to be 103 and see if it's on there, and someone maybe can tell us. Because right at the moment, I'm not sure whether it is or not. If it isn't, I charge $10 for it, plus $2 for postage. so you could get it through my website, and we'll give you the details on that a little while later. Okay, but wait a minute. Let's say, who am I and why did I want to do research on Jesse James? I graduated from the University of Arizona, and I won't tell you how many years ago. It was after they became a state. But anyway, I graduated, and I didn't know anything about conspiracy or everything else until 1962, when I moved to California, and I got a job over there, and I joined the Young Republicans, and they said, Jim, a fellow that I met and then later became a good friend with, said, why are you here? And I said, I'm here to learn how to vote on California politics. No, you're not. You're here to read. And I said, I don't want to read. And he gave me a book to read called None Dare Call It Treason by John Stormer. And I read that book, and remember, I realized this man was telling some enormous truths. It was very preliminary, but it was enough to scare me out of my wits. So I started a study of books. I've read over 1,100 of them by now, and I've read both sides of this issue, and I'm 100% convinced that there is a conspiracy, especially at work in the United States, and that it's leading us someplace. And during that research for that, I've written 4 books, the fourth of which is the Jesse James book. I discovered the story about Jesse that I'm going to relay tonight as briefly as I can and cover as much of it as I can, because this guy was really something. He was an amazing individual. So now let's get started with our story about Jesse James, and we'll fill in some gaps as we go, maybe even going back to when he was born, etc. But let's go now to 1940, 40. Oh gosh, I'm looking for the newspaper. I've got the slides in front of me, and I'm trying to find the newspaper because I should have started there, and I'm not. So far, I haven't found it. But anyway, in 1947, in Lawton, Oklahoma, a man named J. Frank Dalton shows up and claims to the newspaper that he was Jesse James, the famous outlaw. And everybody responded, that's impossible, because everybody knows Jesse died way back in 1882. This is, 60-some years later. And so the newspaper assigned 2 reporters to his story, and they researched it and found out, in their opinions, from all they could find out, they listened to the man for some time, is that he was indeed the legitimate Jesse James. His name of J. Frank Dalton was an alias, but it also concealed the fact that he was indeed a member of Jesse James. J stands for Jesse. Frank was his brother, Frank James, and Dalton was his mother, Zerelda. She was born a Dalton for about 2 years, and then her father died. The parents put her and her older sister, a couple of years older, in an orphanage, and they were adopted into the Cole family, C-O-L-E, but her maiden name originally was Dalton. That's why J. Frank Dalton, in my opinion, J. Frank Dalton used that name as a way of telling people he really was the real Jesse James. So anyway, during the next 3 years, this man lived a story. It kept telling stories, and people were all over the story, all over flying and driving there to meet him in Lawton, Oklahoma, and they did, and they came to him. They were encouraged to be asked any question, even though he was 101 years old at that time. His mind was extremely sharp. He remembered details. First, I'll give you one story. A guy showed up, probably in his 90s someplace, and said to him, Jesse, do you remember saving a guy in Kearney, Missouri in 1848? He said, oh, yes, I remember. Your name is, I'm that kid. He said, oh, yeah, your name was Bill Johnson. I'll make it up. And he said, that's right. He said, well, what happened? Where were you? And he named the details. So even way back in Jesse James's early history, he was able to recall events. in the book called Jesse James was one of his names, one of the first books, in fact, the first book I read on the subject. He, over 40 people signed a notarized statement that they met with this man and asked him the questions they wanted to ask him, and they were convinced that he was indeed the real Jesse James. The newspaper put out a headline. In fact, I'm still looking for it, but I can do it from memory. Jesse James alive in Lawton, Oklahoma. And that story went nationwide, and people from all over the United States came to see him at various times because he had about 3 years of life left. And then a little while later, he moved to Granbury, Texas, and that's where he died in 1951. So let's go back to now 1882 and the shooting, and we'll talk about how we know that he was the real Jesse James. Well, I got to go back. I'm sorry. I start with the Civil War. It's a good place to start. Jesse James was born in Kearney, Missouri, in 1847. So in 1863, in the middle of the Civil War, he was 15 or 16. We'll just round to 16. And he was there with his stepfather, Dr. Samuel, and they were visited by a squad, probably 6 or 8 Northern soldiers who were looking for Frank James, his older brother by a couple of years, who had already left the farm in Kearney and gone to join Quantrell's Raiders. They were an unofficial, official group of really called terrorists, but they were a guerrilla army that had some sanction but not official sanction of the South during the Civil War. So they were looking for information as to where Frank was. Then they were going to go send the Northern Army after them to try to capture the entirety of the guerrilla army. And they tortured Dr. Samuel and Jesse, and they were asking questions about where Frank was, when they last saw him, etc. And both Dr. Samuel and Jesse refused to reveal that information. Dr. Samuel was hung, and they beat Jesse and burned his feet and then hung Dr. Samuel. Dr. Samuel hung for a while. Jesse was able to escape or something, and he cut him down. And unfortunately, because of a lack of oxygen, it affected Dr. Samuel's brain. He could no longer practice as a doctor, and he was around for a while. I really don't know for how much longer. But there's a couple of things that are very important because Jesse was tortured. One part of that story was that he was hung up by his head, or his arms, I guess, over underneath the tree, and they burned his feet so badly that Jesse hardly had trouble walking from that point on until he died at 103. The people, when they did an autopsy on Dalton, they found that his feet were black. So it's interesting. I've got to have a picture of that, and I asked a friend of mine who knew the photographer in 1947. My friend met the man like maybe 20, 30 years later, and he said that the photographer said those really were black feet. And just as a matter of interest, I asked my medical doctor when I went in to see him, probably 6 months ago, I said, do you have any idea as to how they treated bad burns back in the 1840s and 50s? He said, oh, yes, they used black tar. They'd spread it over the bad burn, and apparently it would pull the heat out or cool it or do something to heal it. And I said, would the black tar mark your feet in such a way that it might be permanent? He said, oh, absolutely. That was one of the major problems. So there we have at least, now by the way, this doctor knew nothing at all about why I was asking the question, but he revealed to me that as a medical doctor, this was in about, say, 2010 or 12 or something, he said that that's what they used to do. So that's some evidence that this man, Dalton, was indeed Jesse James. So anyway, Jesse apparently found out who some of those men were. They were locals, or at least not local, but in a small town north of there, about 10 to 12 miles away. And there were two brothers. Well, I believe they were brothers. I can't find out exactly what the relationship was, but their last names were both Bigelow. So, in fact, I've got pictures of their graves in a cemetery near this little town. So apparently they were saying, well, listen, we know one of the guys, we know where Frank lived in Kearney. We'll go down there and ask his family to help us identify where he is. And so apparently Jesse recognized two of those men, and in 1864, he found them both and killed them, shot them dead. And they are buried in a small cemetery near that town. But that was his revenge for what he did to his family, himself and his stepfather. Now, Jesse had to hide, and Jesse ran away and joined not Quantrill's raiders, but a man, what they call a lieutenant, called, God, I tell you, it's amazing. My mind just had it, now I slipped. William Clark Cantrell. So Cantrell was a lieutenant of the, I'm sorry, that's the wrong name, I'm sorry. It'll come to me in a minute. Maybe I'll be able to find it. But anyway, this Bloody Bill Anderson. Bloody Bill Anderson was a lieutenant of Quantrill, and so he joined him. Quantrill wouldn't take him because he was too young, but Bloody Bill Anderson did. So Jesse was hiding, I believe, because he had murdered two men in, I guess he felt that since he was a Southerner supporter, he could get away with this because there was a war between the North and the South going on. So that got Jesse into trouble right away. Now, if someone found out that he had done this, I don't think if the sheriff rode up to Bloody Bill Anderson, I'm here to arrest Jesse James, I don't think Bloody Bill Anderson would want to release him. And I don't think the sheriff, and even if he had a posse, would want to fight these bloodthirsty terrorists, these people in this organization. So Jesse James was safe and hid. And then after the Civil War was over, in about 1874, the next step of this story occurs. I will presume that these two men were both in their 40s, which would mean that during about the same time Jesse was born, in 1840s or so, if one of them had a son, I believe that the next part of the story would fit. That because Charlie Bigelow was a young man who I believe was either his father or two uncles, or father and uncle, whatever it was, but he was a Bigelow and he wanted to seek revenge for the murder of his family. And so he decided to find out who did it, and he found out that it was Jesse. Well, you don't monkey with Jesse James because Jesse already had a incredible history of being a murderer and was extremely excellent in shooting, both with rifles and pistols. So young Bigelow decided that what he would do would be not confront him face on, but he would join the gang because he was a local man and used an alias maybe. And he joined the gang, and as soon as they got another bank to rob, he would notify the Pinkertons, and they would then he would ride with them up to the next bank robbery, but as soon as it started, he would run and flee. So he did. He went with them to the Northfield, Minnesota bank robbery. Now, historians who have covered that bank robbery discovered that almost within minutes of the first men going into the bank, a shot was fired, and someone outside screamed, "The bank is being robbed," and at least 8 citizens from the city went to the windows or even the street and started firing back, which is, I believe, unprecedented in the history of bank robberies. Usually they sneak in, and that's what they did. They snuck in. But as soon as they started the process, the city, one man notified the city, and they learned that the bank robbery was going. They reached for their rifles and pistols, which they had accessible, and fired back. Two of the gang were shot dead in Northfield. The 3 younger brothers were later arrested, maybe within a matter of weeks, and went to prison. And the third of the outlaws that were riding, the 3 brothers and the one Charlie Pitts, were were in a gunfight with the posse that went looking for him, and also the James brothers. But Charlie Pitts got shot there, but the three youngers were arrested and sent to prison. So the whole gang, just about with the exception of Jesse and Frank, was either in prison or dead, and Jesse wanted to know why. And I believe he found out that Charlie Bigelow was the reason. That Bigelow had notified the Pinkerton Detective Agency, which probably sent an agent up to Northfield, Minnesota, and tell them that the banks were going to be robbed on so-and-so date, or at least close to that date, and that it was going to be the Jesse James gang. So Jesse went looking for Charlie Bigelow, and he found him in St. Joseph, Missouri, which is about, maybe 30 miles away from Kearney, Missouri, living in a house there with a wife and 2 children. And he was using the alias of Tom Howard. Tom Howard. So Bigelow's living under the alias of Tom Howard. One morning in the early morning, Mr. Howard, I'm going to call him Mr. Bigelow because that was his real name, went into the barn, and there he was shot dead by Jesse James and one other man. So they made sure that Bigelow was dead. This is not very pleasant, but they drug his body into the house. Mrs. Bigelow came running out. She heard the shot and wanted to know why they had shot her husband. And so he explained to them why. He didn't tell them he was Jesse, but he said to the Mrs. Bigelow, I want you to call the sheriff, get the sheriff, and when you do, I want you to tell the sheriff and anyone else that asks that the man on the floor is the real Jesse James. Now, why would Jesse do that? First of all, he eliminated Charlie Bigelow, which was important. But secondly, he could use that dead body as being the real Jesse James, and Jesse could live on from 1882 on for many years under aliases, and he did that. So, and by the way, Jesse gave Mrs. Bigelow $15,000 to keep quiet about the Jesse James, and she was to change her name to Zerelda. By the way, her name was also Zerelda, so I'm going to call her Z, because there were 2 Zereldas at the same time. One was the daughter-in-law of Mrs. James, and the other one was Mrs. James, the mother. So we'll call her Z. So anyway, Z changed her name to Z James. The young son became Jesse James Jr. and lived to be an adult under that name. I don't think he ever met the real Jesse James. He wrote a book called My Father, Jesse James, in which he praised him as being a great man and a great benefactor and a great father and a gentle and everything else. He probably was, but Jesse James wasn't. So that's the way Jesse got out of the murder. He did not shoot Charlie Bigelow. I mean, he shot Charlie Bigelow, but he paid his cousin, he gave the governor $10,000 reward money and told him that he was to release that money to the murderers of Jesse James. So he got his cousin, Bob Ford, and his brother, Charlie Ford, to admit to doing it, to shooting Mr. James, Mr. Howard, Mr. Bigelow. So they were the ones that got the credit for it, if you want to. Bob Ford never fired a shot that day. He went to the governor to get his reward, and he never got it. But they were tried, both Bob and Charlie, for murdering Jesse James, and they were convicted of it. And then Crittenden, the governor, gave them a pardon, and they never got maybe a small percentage of the reward money. So that's the reason that Bob Ford got the fame, but he didn't do it. Now, there's an interesting sidelight to that, is why Frank James never, ever sought revenge. During those years, like Charlie Bigelow did, you got revenge because there was very little law. You went out after the guilty party and made sure that you eliminated them, just like they had eliminated your relative or family member or whoever it was. But Frank James never did that. About 10 years later, Bob Ford was alive in Creede, Colorado, owning a saloon. And Frank James was seen up there assisting him in that. Now, wait a minute. That's strange that Frank, the brother, would be assisting the man who killed Jesse. But Frank James knew all the time that Jesse was alive. That's one of the evidences we know. Now, there's a couple of quick stories we should cover here. Let's see, maybe we can avoid all this. Let's get past that and get on to some more of the stories about this man. Yeah. Let's see. By the way, here's something. The story is still alive. Just a couple of years ago, Brad Pitt made a movie called just Jesse James, The Outlaw Jesse James, something like that. And in there, Brad Pitt was so amazed at he couldn't explain the crazy behavior, the story that was given out by Bob Ford about the murder of Jesse. The fact that Jesse James took his guns off, he had twin guns, put his holster down on the bed in the same room, and stood on a chair to dust a painting or I'll just call it a painting, during the time that these two outlaws were there with a $10,000 reward over his head. That seems to be rather strange. So that was the way that he covered the story, I believe, to make sure that his relatives and gang members and everyone else around the country that knew Jesse would know that he wasn't dead at all. Jesse would have never taken his guns off, would never have cared enough about dusting a portrait, especially with two outlaws in his who were certainly willing to kill him for $10,000. That's how phony the story is. So Brad Pitt's movie has Jesse hint at committing suicide. Oh, yeah, that's the answer. You can't explain what happened to Jesse James because it just doesn't make sense, standing on a chair, dusting off a picture, giving his guns away, turning his back on outlaws. So he had Jesse commit suicide. But see, I do have an explanation. Jesse James didn't die in the house that day. Okay, now the sheriff sent a telegram to Zerelda about 30, 40 miles away. She came up to identify the body. She saw the dead body and said, "That's not my son. You've made a mistake." So one of Jesse's friends, I still can't find out who, according to Dalton, took her aside and said, "Listen, Zerelda, you've got to say that's your son because your son is going to now be able to live without the name of and the danger of being Jesse James." And so, according to Dalton, the man that claimed to be Jesse, he gave his mother $1,000, and she agreed to tell the story. So that from that day on, the story has been that it was really him. Now, let me tell you this: any reasonable historian studying this story, if he took the picture of Jesse laying in the coffin, there's two pictures of him in any book you pick up, and then compare that to a picture I'll explain in a minute, allegedly being Jesse, you can certainly see that it's not the same man. It's clear. It's abundantly clear. The man in the casket was not Jesse James. Any reasonable jury member would see that and say, that's not the same man. Now, the strange thing about this is only one historian in all of the books I've read on Jesse James ever put the two pictures side by side, and that was that old crazy man Epperson in Tucson, Arizona. But I'm the first one to say, wait a minute, let's look at this. It's clearly not the same man. And so I won't get into any details, but that's what history has said. But no one has ever put the two pictures side by side, and I think it's only fair. By the way, I did find the newspaper. It was May the 19th, 1948, that the Lawton newspaper put out the article, "Jesse James is alive in Lawton." Now we got Jesse still free. We got a dead corpse named Charlie Bigelow. The Youngers are in jail, and there's even reports that Jesse James held up other banks even after 1882. And I believe personally, after doing research for some 30 years on this story, that a lot of people, if I was an outlaw at that time, if I was an outlaw and I'm going to rob a stagecoach or a train or a bank, I would make sure that they believed that I was Jesse James, because Jesse was called a folk hero, and he was robbing from the rich to give to the poor, which never was true. I can find no evidence of that, with one exception. So But I would tell them I was Jesse, and then they would give the money, and they wouldn't shoot you or any of your gang members. So many of the robberies that Jesse was credited with, I believe he didn't commit. See, okay, we're moving down here. There's the two photographs. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Now, Joe Wood, the photographer. Now let's jump now to the J. Frank Dalton story. When he showed up in Lawton, Oklahoma, many people went to go see him, and one was Joe Wood, who was a photographer for the St. Louis newspaper, retired. And he went there and he studied the story as well, wrote a little booklet called My Jesse James Story, in which he's got photographs, including the one of the black feet of Dalton. He was convinced it was him. A man by the name of Rudy Torelli also got involved, and from 1948 to 1951 when he died, he wrote a little booklet as well. Now here's the interesting story, and then we'll get into, since we're about a half hour, we've got maybe another half hour to go, we'll get into some of the more things after 1882. But let's tell this story, because this is also partially indicative of the fact that it was really Jesse James. J. Frank Dalton was really Jesse James. Frank James, his brother, had a son named Robert. Robert James, according to several of the books I read, was alive and well, and people knew him, and they would, there were something like 26 people who claimed after 1882 to be the real Jesse James. And Robert James met with many, if not all, I can't find out, I've got both opinions, but met with at least many of these people and proved that he wasn't, because that was his uncle, and of course he knew him because his father was Jesse's brother. So Rudy Torelli found out about this man named Robert and went to Dalton and said, Dalton, would you be willing to meet with Robert James? And he said, yes, of course I would, but I want to tell you right now, he won't agree to meet with you. He said, no, he's already done this. He's willing to do it. So listen to this. They actually got Lester Dill, who owned the Merrimack Caverns, to come up with a check for $10,000 to give to Robert James to meet with Jesse James. And if it was him, Robert James would report it was him. And if that was the case, Lester Dill could use it as a way to advertise the Merrimack Caverns. I think it's also in Missouri, as a way. This is one of Jesse James's hideouts. And he actually... Anyway, they went to see went to see Robert, and Robert refused to see him. Now, why? Robert James was quoted as saying, I want to make it very clear, I will not see this man under any circumstances. Now, wait a minute. Why did he refuse $10,000 just to visit his uncle and confirm whether he was or was not? And I think the reason was, he knew that it was his uncle and that he couldn't live with the James believing that Jesse was dead since 1882. He was a James as well who lived the lie for 50 or 60 years himself, and he said, I'm not going to reveal that by actually meeting and confirming it. And I'm not going to take the money and claim it wasn't him, and because after I leave, Jesse's going to point out what a fraud I am. So Robert James had the chance to finally end this story once and for all, either way, and he refused to do it. So there's been confusion since 1951 about it being the real Jesse James. Now let's go to some of the things that have happened after 1882 that I think are really interesting. While I'm here, I might as well cover this. No, we'll come back to that. That's not important. Let's go here to part number 2. Just number 2. Okay. Okay, here it is. We've got to study the 1882 to 1951 part of his life because, as I said, he became a senator. But before that, there's one more part of the story I've got to mention. There was really a William Andrews Clark, who was born in Pennsylvania and came to visit the James family, at least a county nearby, in 1863. And I believe that he was a Northern soldier who was injured, according to the biography of William Andrews Clark. There was a story of that biography that he became a school teacher and moved to Missouri because he learned that the James family were relatives of his. So he went there and became a school teacher. And I believe, this is one of the things I cannot prove, except I can only conclude that it's true based on the evidence, but even that's not proof. They got into a dispute because Jesse was a hater because of what he had done to his, what the Northerners had done to his stepfather and himself. And I think he got involved with a fight and killed William Andrews Clark and assumed his identity. And that's one of the reasons why he ran away to the Quantrill's Raiders, Bloody Bill Anderson, so that he knew that he would never be captured and he could fight for fight against the North for what they did to him and his stepfather. So I think that's it. Now let's see if there's any connection between William Andrews Clark and Jesse. But first of all, let's talk about who William Andrews Clark was. And I would dare say most people have never heard of him. But I'm going to tell you some of the things we do know about this man. Many of these things came from the mouth of J. Frank Dalton, who I believe was William Andrews Clark. But let's just go with that. William Andrews Clark owned the United Verde mine in Jerome, Arizona. Jerome, Arizona was a huge, big copper town around 1880 to 1920 or so, and William Andrews Clark bought it and took out $50 million in profit, according to Dalton. And Jerome, Arizona is now not a ghost town, but you could go there and see the mine and talk to people, know about the William Andrews Clark connection. The secretary to the general manager of the mine from 1912 to 1955 wrote a book, and he said this: William Andrews Clark, I'm contending it's Jesse James, William Andrews Clark established no partnerships or financial liaisons outside of his family. He allowed no shares in any of his many corporations to be distributed to the public. Now, and that's the end of the quote. Now, that's an interesting comment. Why would he not want to do this to buy this mine and also other other investments I'll talk about in a minute? Why would he not want to borrow money or create a corporation or partnerships? Because he knew that he was concealing the evidence that he was the real Jesse James, and he didn't want partners to ask questions or make him drop a casual statement, or stockholders wanting to investigate who he was, or board members or anything to find out that he might have been Jesse James. So he decided to do all of this by himself. And I'm going to tell you this. Let me tell you this. Another man wrote a book about William Andrews Clark and this town of Jerome, and he said this because Clark was a senator. He said that William Andrews Clark had become the richest man in the world. William Andrews Clark, the alias of Jesse James, had become the richest man in the world, having surpassed in wealth the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and all other men who loomed large in the world of money. Senator Robert La Follette of Wisconsin, who was a fellow senator of his when he was there, said this about William Andrews Clark: one of 100 men who own America. Jesse James was one of 100 men who owned America. His business partner again wrote this: Clark was one of the 100 men who ruled America. Owned America, surpassing in wealth even the Rockefellers. Bernard Baruch, who was a supporter of Franklin Roosevelt and also a multimillionaire, said that Jesse Clark was one of America's richest 12. That's not quite the same as being the wealthiest in the world, but he was one of the wealthiest men in this nation. Now let's talk about some of the things he did under the name, Jesse did, I believe, under the name of William Andrews Clark. He built a railroad from San Pedro, let's just say L.A., through to Salt Lake City. It was called the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake City Railroad. which is about, I don't know, maybe 1,000 miles, whatever it is. And there was a small tent city about halfway through called Las Vegas. Had maybe 30, 40, 50 people living in it. So Jesse needed water for his steam engines in 1900. So he bought a ranch with 10,000 acres of water. It had water rights. And that then he could use, this is a stop on his way between the two cities for this railroad. And so he then decided to lay out the city of Las Vegas, the downtown section of Las Vegas, a bunch of north and south, east and west streets. He laid it out. Jesse James sat down under the Ellis of Clark and laid out the downtown section of Las Vegas. And if you go to Las Vegas, you go downtown for the older casinos, and then you drive the strip, which is what, now probably 20 miles long or maybe more, I don't know, have all these incredible casinos. But I show you a map of downtown Las Vegas today against the map that was drawn in 1905, and you can see it's the same place. Now, for doing all of this for the town of Las Vegas, William Andrews Clark was honored by the state legislature by dividing a long, narrow county called Lincoln County into half. Reno was the county seat in the northern part of the county, but Las Vegas was apparently smaller, and it was just another city. So they divided in half and named the county Clark County after William Andrews Clark, the alias of Jesse James. And I would dare say that most of the people in Las Vegas have never known this. I've been trying to make it known, and they don't want to know. But let me tell you this. I'll skip that part of the story just because of the time. Now, by the way, the railroad was the only privately financed railroad in America. All of the other multi-millionaire railroaders either borrowed money from a bank or formed a corporation to get capital or formed partnerships. But William Andrews Clark did none of that. So the question is, where did he get the money? And I'll tell you this. By the way, just as a quick aside, Clark built a railroad from Jerome, Arizona to a town he created about maybe 20 miles away called Clarkdale, of course, after him. It's called the Verde Canyon Railroad. And if any of you people want it's a 4-hour railroad trip from Clarkdale to a small town, which is now a ghost town, and they get you there and then turn around and come back through the Verde Canyon, which is a gorgeous, magnificent. I've taken the train ride twice, and I'm going to go back again. It's one of those things you just want to do, sit and relax the beauty. Anyway, that's enough. But one of the things that makes it far more enjoyable is that you know that was the railroad built by Jesse James. Mark Twain said this about William Andrews Clark. He met him, and Clark wrote in a book called Mark Twain in Eruption. He said, I am a person of elevated morals and am much above associating with animals, of Senator Clark's breed. He is as rotten a human being as can be found anywhere. He's a shame to the nation, and his proper place was the penitentiary. He's the most disgusting creature that the Republic has ever produced. And so on my DVD, I theorized that Mark Twain was not a president of the Clark fan club. Okay, now we got a story we can fill in. There's still some more to come about this man known as J. Frank Dalton and Clark. Yeah, we got time. Okay, now, in 1925, when he was about 80-some years old, not quite 80, I think, William Andrews Clark died in New York City, March the 2nd, 1925. And I've got a copy of a front-page story of the New York Times. Ex-Senator Clark, pioneer in copper, dies of pneumonia. By the way, I've got to mention this. He became a multi-billionaire because William Andrews Clark got in the copper industry just as they were making the car, and also Edison was inventing the electricity and the need for copper wire across this country. So Clark made a fortune, but that's still not the source of his money. We'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, in 1925, Clark dies. Well, how could he die in 1925 if he lived to show up in 1947? Because he killed off William Andrews Clark with the same motive, same reason. This way, no one would bother him anymore. He could live under illness. He disappeared for 5 years. He went to Paris, France. So from 25 to 30, he lived in Paris, France. Now, Clark was married until he died with 2 children, one of which died in like 10 or 12, but the other one survived and got married in 1928. Now, listen to this story. She just died maybe a couple of years ago, 3 or 4. I'll have the details in a minute. But anyway, she died at 103, and after 1930, she became a recluse. She disappeared and lived in her house for something like 60 or 70 years. Never came out in public. When she died, they estimated her wealth was over $300 million. Her name was Huguette Clark. And there's been stories written about her. No one can understand why she disappeared from civilization. And life disappeared until she died a couple of years ago. But see, only little Ralphie's got an explanation. And here's what I think it was. I do not believe that she was ever told that her father, William Andrews Clark, was really Jesse James. And he decided he had to get out of the country under that name because Clark was directly involved in the Teapot Dome scandal to remove Warren G. Harding. As I said, a major player. And he was afraid that people would start digging into Clark's background, so he killed him off in 1925. Now, I believe, and I cannot prove this, but at least it will explain possibly why Huguette, the daughter, became a recluse. I think Clark walked back into her life in 1930 and says, "Hi there, daughter." She was, "Wait a minute, you're dead." "No, I'm not. I had to do that for whatever reason he gave her." And then he said, "Listen, I had to do it because my name is really Jesse James." And I think she learned about that and became so disgusted with the whole story that for 40 or 50, 60 or whatever it was of her life, this man had lied to her, her own father, about who she was. And I theorized, that's all I can do, that she said that I can't face up to this, and she hid out for something like 60 years of her life. Well, since 1930, it'll be about, 50 years, so whatever it was. Right now my mind is blank. But anyway, she hid out and didn't become involved with the civilization. So now, let's tell you some more quick stories about this man. And maybe the thing we got to do is cover the Civil War. The Civil War, and Jesse's directly involved in this. I'll tell you how in a minute. The Civil War was not fought over slavery. Oh, no, every book I've read, all slavery was the reason. No, it wasn't. I'm going to tell you very briefly. In 1985, when I wrote the book, The Unseen Hand, I connected the American Revolution, the War of 1812, and the Civil War briefly with one common thread. It was the desire of the European central bankers to force America into the creation of a central bank that they could own, have the authority to print legal tender, and then loan it to the government at interest. And the American Revolution didn't deliver it. The War of 1812 didn't deliver it, so these bankers planned the Civil War. They created a group called the Knights of the Golden Circle. Now, in 1985, when I wrote this and put this in my book, no one was talking about the Knights of the Golden Circle, and now there's all sorts of books on it. So little Ralphie was out there first. I'm not trying to boast. I'm just saying that's the truth. You can confirm it by reading my book. I pointed out that it was the Knights that planned the war in 1837, 24 years before it started. They hired people, sent them to America to inflame people over the issue of slavery, to get the South to secede so that they could fund both sides of the war, and that's what they did. Except they couldn't fund the South. The North, rather, forgive me. Now, this is the Hollywood version of that story, so bear with me. The bankers showed up in Lincoln's right after the war started, and this is, of course, the Hollywood version of Epperson. If I wrote a 5-minute movie about it, this is what I would say. "Hi there, Mr. Lincoln. Yes, welcome. Thank you for coming." He said, "Well, we're the bankers from Europe, and we can loan you the money." We said, "How are you going to pay for this war?" He said, "Well, gee, I really don't have a way to do that. I don't have the way to I don't have a central bank, and I can't just print it, so I don't know how I'm going to pay for it." He said, "Well, we're in the banking business, and we will loan you the money." "Oh, well, that's interesting. At what interest rate?" 36%. And Lincoln says, don't call me, I'll call you. And they left. And so he decided to issue the greenback dollar, which was not borrowed. And I'll give you the exact figures. He saved billions of dollars in interest by doing that. Now, let's take the next step about the Civil War, because we've got to get into the Knights of the Golden Circle. We got about 14 minutes. Let's do what we can, quick. Okay, now, let's avoid, we can't do this. We got to cover this next part of the story. Very important. The South was largely agrarian. It didn't have factories making rifles and cannon and didn't know how to do it, or wheels for wagons, so they bought this stuff, the South, primarily from England and France, and they were transporting it into the South with ocean-going cargo ships. So Lincoln said the way to win the war, like any general should, is blockade the port. He did so. And the England and France realized that they were going to lose the war now, because if they can't get their supplies in there, they are going to lose. So they decided to build huge blockade-running ships. And Lincoln said, okay, then he needed an ally. He got Russia to send the Russian fleet, to northern waters, not only in northern, on the East Coast, but also their Pacific fleet came over and landed in San Francisco, the largest navy at the time. And England and France says, we ain't going to go to war over Russia. So they pulled back. And in 1863, when they came to America, and were visible with orders to fight for the North on any provocation, obey any orders of Abraham Lincoln. So England and France pulled out. Now, what happened? Of course, the Knights of the Golden Circle killed President Lincoln. John Wilkes Booth was a member. You can confirm that with photographs. He shot him because the Knights of the Golden Circle said, we ain't about to have the other presidents do this to us. If we're going to plan a war, you better support it. Borrow the money. So now there's one more quick step in the war, in that assassination. After the assassination was over, let's see if we might have to avoid that. Let's see, save some time. Oh, yeah, John Wilkes Booth. We got to cover Booth. Booth was a member. Booth survived the shooting, lived to be 65, and was poisoned by Jesse James in 1903 in Enid, Oklahoma. Oh, I don't believe that, Ralph. Okay, tell that to Life magazine, who did a story in 1930. You can see it in my video, my DVD. He was poisoned with arsenic, and he was so embalmed with arsenic, they didn't need to embalm him with whatever they used in those days. So the man sold the body of this individual with no relatives. He was living under an alias, the real John Wilkes Booth. Life magazine did a story on it, asked doctors to examine the body, and they concluded it was John Wilkes Booth. Oh, no, Ralph, do you see what's happening to our history? It's a bunch of fairy tales. Now, the Knights of the Golden Circle planned a second civil war because they didn't get what they wanted in the end of the war. They wanted a central bank, and Lincoln outfoxed him, so they killed him. No, there's one more interim thought. In 1867, 2 years later, Vice President Johnson moved up to be President Johnson. He got a bill from the Russian government for $7.2 million, and he didn't have any way to pay him except by buying land. He bought Alaska as a way of paying Russia for the use of the fleet. Oh, no, Ralph, we bought that. No, that was the reason. Now, many people in Alaska know that story, but I ask you to go to your library books, your history books, and even find one mention of this. Zip. You'll find no mention of the fact that the Knights of the Golden Circle assassinated our president. There was a book written within 4 months of the assassination in 1865. It says in one sentence, the Knights of the Golden Circle planned the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Find that in any history book. I defy you. You're not going to find it. Now, maybe you will now because people were writing about it. But when I wrote about it in 1985, nobody was talking about this. Okay, that's enough. Let's see what else we got. A couple of minutes. And then if you want to ask some questions, we'll do that. Let me tell you one more quick story. General George Custer was murdered by Jesse James. Well, no, wait a minute, Ralph. Everybody knows he died at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Yes, but we don't know that Jesse was selling the Indians a repeating rifle called a Winchester. When you watch a movie of the Custer fight, you'll see the soldiers fighting with what they call a Springfield, which is a single shot, takes about 5 seconds to reload it. The Indians had a repeating rifle sold to them by Jesse James. Now, why did they want Clark dead? Why did they want Custer dead? Custer was going to run for the presidency, and he wasn't the choice of the establishment that runs this country. So they rigged it to kill him, and they did. They succeeded. They got him out, took him out. Now, after the Civil War was over, last part of the story, and then you can, if you want to ask questions, we can talk, whatever. After the Civil War was over, the Knights of the Golden Circle planned a second Civil War. They raised $7 billion in gold. It's buried all over the South and the West. People are looking for this money now. I don't know if anyone's ever found it, because I think if they did, they wouldn't tell anybody. And they formed a thing called the Ku Klux Klan. The Knights of the Golden Circle and Jesse James formed the Ku Klux Klan to spread secession, to spread black and white riots in the South, hopefully to foment a second Civil War to get a central bank, and that didn't work either. So Custer was murdered because he wanted to run for president and could have been elected, so they took him out. Jesse James was involved in all of that, and there's even more that I didn't have time to tell you. Now, here's what I would suggest you do. If this story intrigues you, I've got a book out called Jesse James, United States Senator. But even better yet, I've got a DVD out called Jesse James Lived to be 103. I think it's on the internet, and if it isn't, it will be very soon. So just wait for it. Watch it for free. Don't have to buy it or pay for it. But if you want a copy, go to my website and buy it for $12, and I'll send it to you. Okay, we got a couple of minutes. If you want to fire and fall back with questions or comments, all I can do is cover this briefly, and I think I did that. Anyone there?
Yeah, I'm here. Vince, you still is?
Yes, I am here, and wow, so many questions, and that's right in the middle of typing. I've got a video I'm going to drop in chat right now. I was looking for the last one that he did, Ralph. My brother's done here. This is his channel. This one here is Creating Wars for Profit.
That's my DVD, yes, okay.
Okay, so that's one my brother put up, and there's more. So if you'll search his channel there and find some more. By the way,
a bunch of this stuff, some of this story is covered in there about the connection between the American Revolution, the War of 1812, and the Civil War.
I was remembering, because it's been years ago when I reviewed all this work of yours on Jesse James and so much more, The Unseen Hand and others. But yeah, I was remembering all through history, like Seward's Icebox, they called it, or Seward's Folly. When, 16 cents an acre, if I recall, the price of land in Alaska when it was the Secretary of Interior was Seward, I believe, and he bought that.
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State,
yes.
So pretty interesting. Now, I just got back from Las Vegas and Clark County. So all really ties in. Now, what I like to do is...
Seward did what he was told, because they had attempted to assassinate him during that same time period as well, so he was just taking orders at that point.
That's right. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
There were four people. There were 4 people to be shot that night, and if they were all dead, quite likely Stanton, who was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle, would have become president of the United States.
That's correct.
You understand? Stanton was directly involved. He failed to blockade the one exit of the 8 out of Washington, D.C., and that was the exit Booth took. He had to know in advance that Booth was going to escape and go down the very road bridge. It was a bridge, and escape. And so he made sure there were no guards on the bridge. He blockaded the other 7. No inquiry, no look into that. If that was true, Stanton quite likely could have become president.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, they had a bunch of them slated for assassination that night, didn't they?
That's right.
And what about Booth with autopsy or examination, was it, where he had broken a leg previously, and the body of the man that was killed, that was supposedly Booth, didn't have a broken leg?
No, he had injuries. That's one of the four things I covered in my DVD. First of all, they were different ages. Booth was in his 20s, and the guy that was dead, shot in the barn, allegedly Booth, was in his 40s. The man in the barn had red auburn, or at least sandy red hair. Booth had sterling black hair. Booth had a mustache shaved off, and they knew that because he took it off just a matter of days before the shooting, but the other man didn't. Booth broke his left leg, and the guy in the barn had injuries from a shot to his right leg. So clearly he knew. Anyone who looked at that would know that it was not him, and I've got evidence that it wasn't, and it was known at the time. But Stanton went down there and certified that the body laying on the table was John Wilkes Booth. I wonder why he would do that. I'm telling you,
we see a lot of cover-up all through history. I mean, you know, the similarities between Lincoln and Kennedy are pretty amazing, and that's a subject I look forward to hearing between Chuck Ocelli here and you, Ralph Epperson. That'll be very interesting.
Well, we'll be happy to cover that. That's one of the amazing coincidences. Two presidents of ours have issued paper money without borrowing it, meaning no interest payments. Two of them, Abraham Lincoln and John Kennedy. And they've both been assassinated. I wonder, is there something we can learn from that? I wonder. I think so.
Hey, let me give a special shout out to Stephen Roberts. He's listening now. He's a host at another network, and you have been a guest of his 2 times before, Ralph.
Well, I'm happy to do any show I can. By the way, quickly, if I may, Vince, please, www.Ralph, R-A-L-P-H Epperson, E-P-P-E-R-S-O-N, Ralph-Epperson.com. That's my website. Go there, look it out, check it out. Go and do a Google search of Ralph Epperson. You'll see my DVDs that are there for watching. Watch them yourself. Become aware that something's going on in this country, and I know what it is, and I'm doing what I can to expose it.
Awesome. Right in the middle of typing. Can you hear me pounding?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Stephen, drop me your link here, and I'm going to share your link out there for anybody, and I'm sure you have archives. Ralph, you've been on a lot of shows. You've been at this for a very long time. So I think you have a lot of credibility. Now, when you born, about 1936?
Yeah, close enough, 37.
37, yeah. So
that means I'm 39. Thank you.
You've been at this a very long time. You and I have been friends for somewhere about 20 years, I think, pretty close. And you're no different than I, Chuck, or anybody else. You're just a regular guy. I mean, you have some credentials, which, you know, I guess means very little, right? I mean, in the long run, it's pieces of paper. So what really matters is that you've taken your time to examine history and evidence. Hey, y'all hear frogs?
Yeah, we're hearing them.
Vince, I'm outside. It's dark now. The light's waning here in the Ozarks. And J. Cynthia Brooks, I'd like to invite you out. You come on out, and I got a spot for you. So, okay, back to the little more serious side. It's been a great honor having you on, and this is my last live broadcast. I look to doing some more work later on, and of course I will stay involved here at UCY. We got Double Cross coming up. What I'd like to do is just hand it to Chuck. I'd like to hand it to you and let you and Ralph have a little discussion, and also I'd like to invite some callers. And And also, before I hand that to you, let me give you this. Stephen Roberts is at the he's an author at the U.S. Independent, and you can find that at the usindependent.com. So give him a look. There's so many people that are doing great things, and mostly here at UCY, of course. But we do have people that are involved elsewhere that has been an influence also to me. And I'd really just like to give a shout out to Josh Tolley too. He's done a lot of good work. So, anyways, let me hand it to you guys and let you have the discussion for a bit.
Well, really quickly, Mr. Epperson, because you covered a lot of areas here with the Jesse James story, and I find it interesting that some of it parallels the same kind of stuff that went on with the Billy the Kid, William H. Bonney story as well. Because are you aware of that?
Yes, Billy the Kid showed up. They had a birthday party for Dalton in 1947, I guess it was, because he would be 102, I think it was. And Billy the Kid showed up at that, and there's pictures of Jesse James and Billy the Kid. He was calling himself Brushy Bill Roberts. They lived side by side, according to Dalton, for 6 years. They both, each one of which knew the other man's story, and they failed to reveal it. And he showed up. Shortly, within a matter of days after his being with Jesse James Dalton, Brushy Bill Roberts died in his 90s. But they both knew each other's secret.
Right, that was exactly why I brought it up. I thought you were aware of that. I added in a caller, 818. You're on.
Hey, this is Jay Cynthia.
Oh, hey.
Hi, Jay.
From Cancer. Hi, from Cancer
welcome.
Kickers.
This is Jay Cynthia Brooks from Cancer Kickers right here, UCY.TV Saturdays. Love you, girl. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys? I'm loving this show. I actually have a specific question, if I may, for Ralph. He's just amazing and so informative. It's blowing my mind.
Well, I can only tell you that it's been a rewarding. There's even if you want, there's one more part of the story which might be kind of interesting to you if you want to hear it. It'll take a couple of minutes, but I'm thankful that you like the story. And I think what I said hopefully will get you concerned or interested in the story, and either see or watch or get a copy of my DVD. Jesse James.
Oh, absolutely. I just wanted to backtrack a little bit to the 1812 War.
Yes.
And the reason I have an interest in this is, you guys will love this story. It'll be very short, but it's a great story. My grandfather was a character, and he was, excuse me, he was a pioneer, one of the pioneer scuba divers in this country, and he was in Buffalo, New York. So what he did was, he was a great swimmer, and what he did was he cut out of a water heater, the old-time water heaters. He cut it up and made it like an old-time scuba diver thing and ran the garden hose out, the top of it. He and his brother did this, and he was the first to the bottom of the Niagara River. And he discovered so many different things from the 1812 War, and very interesting things that people said didn't exist, and this, that, and the other, and he kept pulling them up and pulling them up. And what was awesome about it is that the papers were always there to photograph it, because we're going back to the 20s and 30s, and there wasn't as much cover-up going on as there is now. And I have all of those original newspaper clippings, and now he's passed on, of course, and I have all those artifacts. And there's some very bizarre things, and so I was wondering, if you could talk just a little bit about, again, what was really the purpose of the 1812 War?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, the American Revolution was fought between England and the United States, and it was intended to be a costly war, a long war, as long as they could make it, to force the United States into the position of creating a central bank as a way to pay for it. So in 1791, George Washington, our first president, 1789, 2 years later, created the first bank of the United States, a central bank owned by the European bankers, and so that they could borrow the money to pay off the debt of the American Revolution. The bank had a 20-year charter. It was to from 1791 plus 20 is 1811. So Monroe made sure that it was not renewed in 1812. So guess what? We had a war with England in 1812. Isn't that an interesting coincidence? The Second Bank of the United States was created in 1816 to pay for the cost of the War of 1812. That bank had a 20-year charter called the Second Bank of the United States in 1836. Andrew Jackson made sure it was not renewed, so the Knights of the Golden Circle was created in 1837, the very next year, and they planned the Civil War in the United States, started in 1861. So 24 years it took them to convince the American people we needed to have a war between the North and the South. That's the story of the War of 1812.
Now, and so what's interesting is that I have coins, like there's these, coins, currency that he pulled up from the bottom of the Niagara, and were they minting all over the place? Because I have coins that nobody can identify.
Well, it's quite likely the money was probably issued by a state bank, or maybe even by the assayer. People would find gold and they take it to an assayer. He would determine how good it was and melt it down and put it into a coin form generally and stamp on it that it was worth, or maybe give it to the bank and the bank would stamp on it a coin. So this money could very well have been issued by state banks who were chartered, or maybe even city banks that were chartered either by the city or by the state. I can't say, but that'd be my first guess.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and also I'm just curious because at the bottom of there was a sunken ship, and that's what he discovered, and he was pulling up all these artifacts out of it, and they were using it seemed to be there in the coin collection that he had that I now have. They were still using a great deal of Spanish currency and Hispanic currency and all these different things. So it was just like money all over the place, these things. Is that right?
Well, previous to the centralized banks, there was a great deal of mix matching of various currencies, including foreign currencies as well as localized sort of scripts, and also coinage like Mr. Epperson was describing that was made by various banks, different minters. There was sort of a chaotic kind of hue to the monetary system at that time. And so you're looking at the money that was actually previously issued before the War of 1812, and in that case there was a lot of things being exchanged as currency. It was sort of like if you accepted it, then it was currency. It didn't matter if it was sticks, So, but that's I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm sure Mr. Epperson will agree with me. That's true. At that time, basically, it was based on your willingness to accept it, whatever it was, even if it was foreign coinage.
Well, now all of what. Oh, go ahead.
Let me interject. There was a lot of different coinage and stuff like that, and I do have a suggestion, J. Cynthia. Perhaps you might sell them, finance your trip out here to Arkansas, and I'll help you spend the rest.
Well, what's interesting is that I am looking to place them. The Maritime Museum in Buffalo is interested, and there's another company that's interested. And I'm looking, I have them in storage, and I know my grandfather would not like that. So if anybody can give me suggestions, I'm looking to, these things are amazing. These are amazing artifacts, like swivel cannons and these anchors and all this crazy stuff. So if anyone has suggestions, I'd love it, because I am looking to place them, because I think my grandfather would like, people to see all of these interesting artifacts and the coins and just simple things like the kind of pipes they smoked back then. And he really did the research. He really went back and, this is why they were smoking these kind of short little pipes at this given time. So, yeah, thank you. And when that happens, Vin, I'll be in Arkansas.
Cool stuff. By the way, I've added in Michelle Mashuli.
Michelle, I love you, girl. This is my other girlfriend. Y'all don't be hating, okay?
Oh, I'll fight for you.
It's been a little while since I called in, and I heard there was a party, so I had to join. I'm not sure who is on air right now. So, hello.
Well, we have J. Cynthia Brooks, Chuck Ochelli, the fantastic man behind the Ochelli Effects. We have Ralph Epperson, my guest. He's been on with me before. He started me on my road to this road to discovery. This voyage, my maiden voyage, was back in May 2nd, a year ago last May. So, hey, we're continuing on. This is my last live broadcast. I hope to be back here with some more pointed and not the and ums, and so kind of like some podcasts. UCY is going to be doing some things a little differently, and I am forever a part of UCY. It's in my blood. I don't know if it's an infection, but hey, I got that fever. I got the fever. That'd be okay. And we're going to add some more cowbell.
Vince, there's another part of the Jesse James story if you'd like to hear it.
I'd love to.
I know I would.
Me too. I'm on a weird phone, so I'm going to go over to the chat room and listen in. Love you guys, and talk to you soon, okay?
Okay, see you soon, girl. Go ahead, Mr. Everson.
Okay, let's go back to the 1882 shooting of Jesse James, allegedly Jesse James. Jesse, one of the things that Jesse did was get Mrs. Bigelow. We'll call her that because, of course, that was her real name before she got her husband shot. So Mrs. Bigelow was told by Jesse to tell the sheriff that the man was Jesse on the floor. Jesse then gave Mrs. Bigelow a picture, and that Mrs. told her to use this and claim it was the official picture of Jesse James. And whenever you go to a book, a general book, or at least a DVD or whatever, this picture will be the one they use of Jesse James. And what she did was arrange for, I guess, a printer someplace in her town to take a cardboard frame with a circle cut out in the center. And then she would tape this picture behind the cardboard. But the cardboard was printed on the bottom, something like this. This is to certify that this is the only known photograph of Jesse James, signed Mrs. Jesse James, and then dated with the shooting date, or shortly thereafter, 1882. So everybody uses this picture of Jesse James. Now, about 4 months after the shooting, a writer named Carl Triplett, I think it was, came to Mrs. James, Mrs. Bigelow. Of course, he didn't know her by that name. He was Mrs. Jesse. So he said, let's write a book about what you know about this man. And she got the cooperation of Zerelda James, the mother. So the three of them put out a book. It's entitled something like The Life and Times, or Authentic Story of Jesse James. On the copy of the hardbound copy that I have, this photograph has been reproduced because everybody uses it. And even then, I presume when the book was written, it was acknowledged to be the only picture of Jesse. So it's on the cover of this book written in 1882. A few years ago, they printed a paperback edition of this book by Triplett, but the picture has been removed and another one substituted for it. Now, I have never, with one exception, I'll reveal in a minute, I've never seen this picture, even allegedly claiming to be Jesse James, with the one exception. Apparently, the people who published the paperback edition believe that the picture that they've been using for years was not of Jesse James. So they used this alternative picture on the cover of the paperback edition. If you go to Google or even eBay and look up the paperback edition, you'll see this picture. Now, there's a picture that was taken of J. Frank Dalton seated in a chair, kind of leaning a little bit forward, and in his lap, at an angle, he's got a huge frame, a wooden frame, and it's probably, let's say, 2 by 3. It's good sized. And there are pictures of 3 individuals. It's not a group portrait. You can tell that there are 3 separate pictures of 3 individuals. And it's hard to tell, but it looks like Dalton is looking at the picture of the man in the lower right-hand corner. Allegedly, according to the picture when it's separated from Dalton, the left-hand man is supposed to be Jesse. The woman in the center is Zerelda James, the mother, and the picture that Dalton's looking at is supposed to be Frank James. It's neither one, because that is the picture, the face of the man on the the paperback edition of Triplett's book. So apparently the people who published Triplett's book believe that that picture is of the real Jesse James. Now, I've never seen that picture except with this one exception, and I'm trying to find out where it came from. But anyway, I wrote an article for the Paranoia magazine a couple of months ago, and the lady that designed the cover for the magazine took half of this picture, the left half, as you look at it, and combined it with the right half of a picture of William Andrews Clark. I must have 30 pictures of Clark, all the way from being a young man in his 40s or 30s, all the way to when he died in 1925. It's clearly the same man. All those pictures are the same. So she found a front view, head-on view, and scotch taped the two pictures together at the same size. And it is clearly the man in this picture that Dalton was looking at appears to be the very same picture as William Andrews Clark. That's the first confirmation I've got photographically that these men are the same. I've got embalming evidences, eyewitness reports, but never photographic evidence. Now, I'm looking for someone who knows how to deal with facial recognition. So if any of your listeners or know someone who can help me, please get in touch with me. Go to my website, Google Ralph Epperson, find my phone number, call me, get back in touch, and let's get together with that person. I'd love to pay them, because if I can prove that all three of these men are the same man, this story's got to be told to the American people. It's a major story in our past.
I shared that picture. I believe I have the right one, a side-by-side. I put that up on Flickr, and I posted it earlier in chat. I'll grab that in a minute. I'm posting now for Double Crossed. Stay tuned here in just about 12 minutes or so. Double Crossed Radio is coming up. And, hey, I would like to bring in Michelle for a moment and let's get her input. But tonight, well, I don't know if Kobe will be there, and David probably won't be, but Drew and Chuck will be there. And this is another awesome exploration of the world of Bitcoin. Also, they have Elaine Diane Taylor, a guest tonight, and that's... Hey, Mr. Epperson, stand by. Let's bring Michelle in for a moment. Hey, I love you, girl. Come on in. Give your input. We're running out of time. Let me also add in thanks to Phyllis Sinclair, forever my mantra at last. Jaja will rock us out with Radioactive, of course. Do visit RalphEpperson.com. I posted your links. If you're on Facebook, I've got all those links there. So anyways, welcome, Michelle.
Well, hello, Vince. How are you?
Awesome. So nice to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a while since I've been on UCY Air. I hope you're doing well.
Super. This is the last live broadcast of What Matters Worldwide, and so I hope to be back with something in the new venue.
No, I know that it was your last broadcast, and I was actually on another show right now, and we had a quick ending because I had to come over and say hello because it's all your fault. Everything that goes on now with me and radio is Vincent Easley's fault. Because it was completely your fault. I went on just to talk for a few minutes, and hours upon hours later, somehow I ended up talking on more shows, and here I am now with shows coming out of my ears, and it's all your fault. You made the radio bug bite me, and here I am now just talking everybody's ear off.
Well, you know, that's my premise is connecting voices with what matters worldwide. And shout out to Road Dogging. Dad Dog. Yep, I'm back in Arkansas. And here I'm dropping Ralph Epperson's link into chat. Lots of great information. I have so much in my head from him, so much study that I've done that all started from Ralph Epperson, great guy. I really appreciate having you on, Mr. Epperson.
Well, I can assure you it's my pleasure. Vince, anytime I can be of help to you, anytime, please keep in touch.
And I intend to continue right here at UCY and helping. Drew, welcome. I see you in chat, and I'm sorry for last week. I have neglected to keep everybody personally informed on where I am at in life. I'm back home in Arkansas. My living plans changed a little bit. I was going back home and going to set my trailer back over yonder and turn everything back on. Hey, say, welcome. But things have changed, and so I'm kind of off grid right now. I'm kind of skipping right here on Wi-Fi. And Maddie, all right, welcome. Hey, this is in the flavor of Nathan Frazier, Live Free FM right here Sunday nights. Shout out to everybody in chat and welcome. So let me hand it to somebody. Say something, somebody.
I don't know what you want said here, Vince. It's going to be different without you.
No more Thursday nights, but hey, we're going to be back at it, and hopefully Keeper of the Republic, Dave Everest, and Colby Olson will be putting something together here pretty soon. And like I said, Jules announced earlier, we're going to have a much better format coming along here at UCY.tv, and it's pretty neat. If y'all have not checked that out, get with Jules.
That's pretty exciting. UCY has a great format, and I really enjoy y'all's chat client as well. That's one of my favorite things about UCY is you get to be so connected to your listeners.
Absolutely. So, sorry, I'm gonna. I interrupted myself here to share Double Crossed Radio, and let me hand it back to you guys, and let me finish doing a little promo for Double Crossed.
Well, Mr. Epperson, I just want to say that this has been a fascinating story. I really wish we had a little more time to get into some of these other things, about Jesse and about the sort of false history that's been told about him thus far. Generally speaking, there was a whole lot of holdups after 1882 that were attributed to him. There was a whole lot of holdups that were attributed to him during his supposed official lifetime as well that quite honestly had nothing to do with him.
That's correct. The Northfield, Minnesota raid. No one's ever come up with the idea that Charlie Bigelow was along. Most books write about, in fact, all books with one exception that I read about the Northfield raid said there were 8 men there, Jesse and 7 others. But one guy up in who wrote on the story said there was at least one more man, but he doesn't know who it was, and I believe it was Charlie Bigelow. And I believe Bigelow told the Pinkerton Detective Agency about the robbery. They told the people, the sheriff probably of the city, and also the people, their bank was going to be robbed by Jesse, so get prepared, and they were. And they really decimated his gang. And if they did that, and when he found out that it was Bigelow that told him, I think it got Jesse very angry. And that no one else has ever connected that Northfield raid to the death of Charlie Bigelow, but I did in my book, The Unseen, in my DVD called Jesse James Lived to be 103.
No, absolutely. But I mean, the fact that there was other ones ascribed to him as well. I mean, there's that raid, which definitely was, a setup. Let's just put it that way. And I've always wondered about that because that was one of the few instances where the town turned against the so-called James Gang, and there was just this sort of backlash which had not happened previously.
I don't think there's ever been a bank robbery where the people of the city fought back that I'm aware of, and there's no other mention in any of the books I read that anything other than the traditional robbery, which is you hold the bank up, you take the bag and get the money, get out and get on your horse, and right away maybe the sheriff or some townspeople come out and fire as you drive away. But this case, they were in the buildings and came out on the street to fire. 2 people were murdered that day during the shooting, other than the James Gang. So it was And by the way, according to the books that I read, the total take that Jesse and his gang got was $23.70. So you can see they didn't make a big killing on that particular bank, except the people made sure that there was no money in the bank, I gather, or at least a very small amount. But Jesse shot and killed the one of the tellers. They believe it was Jesse. That's quite still open as to whether it was Jesse in the bank or Jesse outside the bank. But all we know is that Jesse and Frank both survived and went on for a long time. Of course, that was 82 or something like that. No, 80, I'm sorry, I forgot the exact year. But it was quite some time before he died in 1951. By the way, while we got a second, I can tell you briefly, a friend of mine tried to exhume the body of Dalton in Granbury, Texas. And to make the story very short, he had the casket was allegedly buried in a little six places to bury a family. They put a little concrete wall around it, and the tombstone for Dalton was placed in number 2.
You mean a mausoleum, right?
Well, no, this was out in the open cemetery.
Oh, okay.
It was a little wall of maybe 3 inches above the grass line in a rectangle, and there were 6 places for burial, 3 of which were empty and 3 were filled. One of the 3 was where this tombstone for Dalton was. And so that's where my friend got the permission to dig. When they dug down, they found out it was a vault, a metal vault instead of a wooden casket. So they knew they didn't have the body, but fortunately it was an interesting result. To get the vault out of the ground, they had to dig around on both sides to remove it because it might have been
guys, we're coming up. We're coming up on the end. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody that's been along on this journey. It's been really fun. I'm not going to be here anymore on Thursday nights, but I like I said, I'm still forever a part of UCY. Going to do great things. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Ralph. Jay Cynthia, I love you, girl. Hey, Michelle. You know I still love you too, girl. This is my other girl coming out, Jaja, Radioactive. And listen to this song. And stay tuned. Double Cross Radio. Introing them is Listen. So I think that's what we need to do is listen, right, to each other. And let's kick some stuff around, right? Thanks, everybody. Love and peace. And now I'm going to ground, leaving the airwaves. Well, let's see.
From Democrats to Republicans, your information's jumbling. The USA is crumbling. Y'all sit back, dumb as shit. The mass invasion, the home invasions, the CPS is coming to snatch your babies. These confiscations, the conversations, they're operating within the zones we trade in. We're in the matrix, now we're totally raided. They infiltrated, finally the devil gave in. If you can't hear me, then pump up the volume. McDonald, Bin Laden, Osama, Obama, bring up something real, legalize marijuana. Everything on a bong hit is as blonde as Madonna. Radioactive, intergalactic, counterattacking, the main attraction, make it